And now we can go and texture this. So we can merge these together. And now we have a really messy UV map, but we have about 4 textures we can get out of this. So for texturing this, I would encourage you to get a dedicated texturing software like Substance Painter or Designer or something else. I have Substance Painter, which I really like, but for this video I'm just going to stick to Blender only. So yeah, let's just get started. So we don't need this UV editor anymore, so we can just merge that together. And then over here I want to have a shader editor, probably vertically, because we have a vertical building, so we get more space in our screen. Just change that to shader editor and add in a new material. And we're going to call this wall probably. So the first thing we want to do is just look at the reference image again and just try to pick out some different materials we need to make. So what I can see is the green wood in the bottom part of the store, of the restaurant. And maybe I can combine that with the windows. Then we need a dedicated roof texture. And then we need the bricks or the wall. And one material for the sunshade or whatever that's called. I still don't know. So those are 4 materials. And we can just, one for the door as well. The door is also different. You can make variations in between those materials, but those are just the main materials I can see. So over here in the material tab, we can see our material and we can switch over to cycles because we're going to be baking this. So we need cycles to get this baked up. So I can go into rendered mode and then go over to this tab and disable scene world. So we get HDRI lighting and we can change the HDRI here. We can also just duplicate these windows and just place them in their corresponding place, just like we did in the beginning. And I'm just going to duplicate those windows real quick. All right, so now that's done. We can just merge everything together. And then we have some overlapping UVs, but it doesn't matter because they are shared UVs. And here in this material, we can go back to our rendered mode, by the way. We are going to make a really nice brick wall. So what we need for this is a Musgrave texture. So Shift A, search for a Musgrave texture and just place it in here. Shift A, add in a bump map and get the height to the height and then the normal to the normal. And this will add some bump to our building. With Node Wrangler enabled, that's an add-on that you can install by going to Edit Preferences, Add-ons, and then searching for Node Wrangler. This one. When you have this texture, you can press Ctrl T and add in these mapping nodes. We want to set this to object, so everything is just based on wherever it is in the scene, where the origin is. The noise will just be dependent on that, and everything will tile really nicely. We can set this dimension to about 0 and the detail, crank that up. And now we have this really nice stucco looking style. We can maybe add in a little bit more dimension. This just makes it a lot rougher. Because we have very sharp edges, I also want to add in a bevel node. So we can add in a bevel with the normal instead of having to do that with actual geometry. To mix this together, you don't want to put it in a normal, we just want to mix this together. So with Control Shift and right mouse button, we can just mix these together, set it to the default color and mix. And this will add a really nice bevel. So this is without and this is with. It really makes a difference. It makes everything look a lot softer. You can also play with the radius of this to make it even more softer. So maybe 0.1 looks really nice. You don't want to go too crazy with this because there are still just sharp edges with the geometry. So if you come up close, it will look pretty fake. You won't even notice it. But from a distance, this works really well. Of course, at the edges, the stucco or the wall is a little bit dirtier or more broken. So we can add in a ambient occlusion node. And if we preview this, we can see these dark values. And this is where we are going to add our dirt. So add in a color ramp and then increase the black a little bit. Make it look dramatic, something like this. If you want, you can select inside as well. This will make it even more dramatic, but I don't think I'm going to use that. Just the default. We can play with the distance a little bit. I think this looks really well. And to break this up a little bit, because this is pretty perfect, we can add in another Musgrave texture and then just mix this together with Control Shift and right mouse button. And then we want to set this to linear light, I believe. No, it was overlay. Okay, so when we set this to overlay and set the detail to 15, dimension to about 1 or 0.1, I mean, it will look like this. And now that I notice it, we can probably just use this Musgrave texture. We have some really nice grunge. And we are going to use this as a mix. I'm just going to board this up so you can really nicely see. So Ctrl J will add in this panel. And it will make it a lot easier for you to see what I'm doing. So to understand the different parts of this machine. And I can also name this. So now you can follow along really easily. Okay, for this grunge we need a dirt texture. So we can just add in a new principled BSDF. And then just mix these two together. Preview that. And for the factor I want to use this result. So everywhere where it was black, it will give us our new principled BSDF. And everywhere where it was white, we will still have our old stucco texture. As you can see here. So if you now set this a new grunge or dirt texture to like black, we can see that appear. And then we can just change the parameters of the dirt here. So make it rougher, change the color, be a lot more brown. And we can also add in a bump texture. Just grab this one. It's a little dark. All right, so this will be our dirt texture. And I'm going to add in a Musgrave texture for that. I want a different one. Let's see, add in a bump as well. So this to the height and to the normal. And I'm just gonna focus on that area. Set the detail to 1 and then or 15 and then the dimension to something like 1. With the mapping node as well. We don't really need the mapping node since we're not going to change that anyway. So just dissolve that by pressing Ctrl X. All right, set the scale to, well, I think this looks pretty good. We just need to crank down the strength a little bit, 0.25. And then we can use this as our color as well. So add in a Hue, Saturation, and Value node. And then I'm going to copy over this value. We can hover over this base color and hit Ctrl C and then Ctrl V over this to get that color in there. And then I can use this as a factor. So everywhere where it's black, the changes I'm doing here will not happen. And everywhere where it's white, it will happen. So I want to make this, let's see. I make this this color a little darker in some spots, so I can crank down the value. And you will see some dark spots appear at the exact place where our texture is white. So we just have some difference in that. We have our dirt texture. Just set the roughness to just 1 or something near 1. So there is a lot of extra dirt. So there's just more dirt. Let's see how we can add that. I think I want to make like a kind of black dirt texture, a lot darker. So I'm going to add in another principled BSDF. And this one is not going to be based on like the corners and proximity to other meshes, but just a random dirt texture. So just going to search for noise texture and then a Musgrave texture. Setting this factor into the vector of the Musgrave. We can see the noise texture and then the Musgrave and then the noise texture as well. Set the roughness to 1 and then the detail up. And then adding some distortion. We'll give this like kind of scratched look. It's really weird. And then we can kind of cycle through the phase. And with a math node, we can get a greater than value, so black or white. And then just kind of clamp that off. Just so we know it's either 1 or 0. With another Musgrave texture, I want to subtract some values from there. So let's see, let's make this about 2 tall. And then just mix these together. Or add in a math node. And subtract this value. Or multiply, I mean. So we get this, add in some more detail. A little bit less dimension. And that looks pretty okay. So you can join this together. Random dirt. And then just use that as the factor for the other mix shader. So duplicate this mix shader. Set that to the factor. Shader to the shader. And principled BCF to the shader. Let's set this to black. Let's try to see if we can find some of these scratches. Less than 0. Like this. Set the roughness to 1. And then make this a little bit more brown. Not too much. Alright, yes, this adds a little bit of dirt. Nice. We don't really need to give this an object coordinate. It will still tile just as well. The object is just so it's more predictable. I'm going to use this factor from the noise value as a hue, saturation, and value factor. And then just copy this over. Just to get some variation. Give it the same bump as the other dirt texture. And that should be fine. I'm going to call this darker dirt. And this is what we have. Alright, so I think that we can just leave that there. The stucco should be, or the wall should be fine. So now I'm just going to go over to this really easy thing here. Call this sunshade. I still have no idea what to call this. And we're just going to keep this really simple because this is best if you do this with texture painting. So just changing that to a dark green and setting the roughness to 1. Adding in a bevel node to bevel that normal. I can go very extreme with this. Of course, if you zoom in, it won't be noticed, but if you zoom out a little bit, it looks a lot more softer. So just do that. And we could maybe try to add in the waves with, or the stripes with a wave texture. But I don't know if I will be able to. So add in a wave texture. Let's see how that looks. Yeah, okay. Can maybe duplicate this and set this to Y. And mix them together. No, that doesn't work. Setting them to diagonal, maybe? That kind of works. Not that well, no, not really. Let's see, a wave texture. Adding in a color ramp. Setting this to constant. And then just increasing that, something like this. Maybe in the vector I can add in a gradient, set to spherical. Ctrl T for the mapping, set it to object. And then just try to move the location. No, keep it generated. Oh, radial. Yeah, radial. I mean, that works. Somewhat. If I increase it, it kind of looks okay, I'd say. Yeah, I think this works. Maybe if we add in an empty sphere, we can give this some more control. So in the texture coordinate, just select our empty. And then we can set this to object. And then select our empty and move it. And yes, this gives us a lot more control. It's much more intuitive to like place this somewhere here. and know that stripes are coming out like this. So yeah, just do it like that, and then just move it to where you want them to be. So something like this. It's not perfect, but it's certainly nice. Yeah, I like this. All right. We need to keep that empty there until we have baked. So just keep that there. Do not remove it. And in this color ramp, we can get a vector. So Ctrl J and call this stripes. I'm going to duplicate this and I'm going to set this to white. Mix them together and set this as the vector. And this will be our vector. All right, we can change the amount of stripes. And I think this looks really nice. We can also change the thickness of the stripes here. Just so you know. Make this a little bit darker. And more yellow. Yeah, that looks really cool. Really nice. Of course, we can also just go over to the other material and copy over this grunge map. So Ctrl C, and make sure you have something active. So make sure something is white. So Ctrl C, go over to your sunshade and paste that in. And in here, I'm going to add in another mixed shader and set this to the vector. And we also want this Musgrave cat texture, of course. So Ctrl C that as well. And paste that in. Like this, yeah. All right. And then we want to set this to the bottom input and copy over our dirt. Make sure you have something white. And then just paste that in. And then we have dirt on our thing as well. And that makes sense because it's under a balcony. This will get dirty. Also going to add in some more dirt. So just a Musgrave texture. Let's duplicate this. And another mix shader. Another principled BSCF. Also keep that bevel. You can also just reuse the nodes, I guess. So like this. All right. Musgrave texture as the vector. And then just make this really dimensional, I guess. With the math node, we can kind of dial it down a little bit. So multiply with something small. And then just set this to black. Something like this. Yeah. Of course, it's not new, so it should have some dirt on it. Alright, I think that's it for our sunshade. So just going to select all of these windows here. With face select, I can select all of these groups. But we might need to just manually select it if it messes up. Alright, I think I've selected all of the windows here. Yeah, okay. Do we select this as well? I don't know. To look at the reference, yes, we need to select this as well. New material, and assign that. And set this to wall again. Alright. So let's go into render mode, we're pressing Z and holding it down, and then going up. Yeah. This now has a new material. And we can make that green. So just call this restaurant, I think. It's not going to be used anywhere else. Maybe on the windows? I don't know. First, to get a feel, just set this to the green color. And try to kind of match this to the reference. It looks something like this, but just a lot darker. Or maybe desaturated. Yeah, something like this. Alright, for this I'm going to copy over the Stucco. Just everything here. Yeah, just everything. Just going to copy over everything, paste that in, and copy over this color. Oh, that color, and paste it over here in the stucco. Then just delete that. All right. So that was really easy. We had all the dirt already, and also the bump and things like that. We can remove this bump here, because this should be wood, not stucco. But we can keep this Musgrave texture for that overlay. And kind of get like a wood grain. And I think that will work with this Musgrave texture. So set that to a bump in the height. And set that to the normal. Let's see how that looks. Yeah, that looks a lot grainier than I want. So just copy this over and use it like that. Just make this scaling or this scaling a lot bigger, and also distort it a little bit more. Let's see how that looks. Yeah, that looks kind of like wood. Yeah. And then just mix these two together. And yeah, that looks really cool. Really nice already. With the dirt added in. Alright, perfect. We can change the color here if we want. Make it a little bit more desaturated. Yeah. Can add in the glass here. I'll add in a new material. Call this glass. And for the glass material, you can just click on this principled BSDF and just click on glass BSDF and change the roughness down to 0. That's all you need to do. You can now look into the building. Alright. For this door. Yeah, we're going to do this door. We can select this door. Create a new material, call this door. And assign, and as you might have guessed, go over to the wall and just copy everything over again. We only need to make it darker and woodier. So why shouldn't we just copy this over? Or maybe, because this should be wood, we could just copy the restaurant. Because we've already set it up to be wood. Yeah, and then just change the color. It should be dark. And the dirt should be brighter than the door. Make this dark green, I guess. And set this to be glass. Assign. Yeah. And that's about it. We can do the same with this door. Door, assign. For these windows, I think the restaurant material will suffice. The color looks pretty much the same. So just by pressing L over these, we can just assign it. Yep. And now for the roof. For this roof, we can just make a new material. Call this roof. And we are going to copy over the door material, or no, the restaurant material, because it should be stone. Paste that in. Control Shift and left mouse button to preview that. And we're going to change the color to be really dark. Oh no, this is the restaurant texture. That's not what we wanted. The wall texture right here. Yep. Alright, make that darker green. Not that dark. It's dark green. Make the dirt very dirty. Very black. Also just desaturate this color. It's way too green. And let's see. The bump needs to be really bumpy. So set the dimension to like 1. Or that's a little bit too much. Something like this. Scale it up. Yeah, something like this. And assign the wall to those textures. Or those faces. Alright, the restaurant needs to be a lot darker. Because in context it looks way too bright. something like this. So really, really gray, but still green. Yeah, all right. I think texturing wise, this might be it. I think I'm going to add some bump in this sunshade as well. So right here we only have the bevel, but I'm going to add in a Musgrave texture to object. Just a lot more detail. Dimension. Not too much. Add in a bump map and just mix that together like this. Did that add some bump? Oh, should be in the normal, of course. And make that really not strong. Yeah, like this. Just to get some difference. And desaturate this again. Yeah, okay. I think this is it. We have materialized it, and now we need to bake these textures. Alright, we have a lot of textures, but it should be fine. So move that down. What we want to do is just go into every single one of these materials and add in an image texture. Click new and then set the width and height to 496. You can change two values at once by just clicking and dragging. Name this something like ground floor underscore albedo. Albedo will just be the color. And then just Ctrl C and Ctrl V this node everywhere. And make sure that it's active so the outline is white. Alright, so now that all of these nodes are active, we can go over to this render properties. Go over to bake. Before you bake, make sure to save. It's really important because it might crash. And then you want to go over to bake type and go over to diffuse and then just deselect direct and indirect. Just have the color enabled only and then just hit bake and just wait until it has baked. The reason why we made the texture 4096 is because that is just in the table of 2 and it's just a 4K texture, which is a really common practice. It's also really high quality, so you get a lot of detail in there. You can also drag down here and open up an image editor and we will see the texture appear once it's done. This is our albedo texture and I just noticed that we have overlapping UVs enabled, so not really a good idea. Basically what happened is we baked the miscellaneous part, the second floor, the first floor and the ground floor into the same texture and that doesn't work. So we need to disable that. So we can use these vertex group we made to separate our model. So select the mist group, hit P and then by selection. Then go over to the second floor, select and then P by selection. So first the first floor, we're just going to bake the first floor. And as you can see, that will be a lot different. So with the first floor enabled, just go over to baking and just bake again. Alright, so this looks a lot better, of course. We can just go over to image and then save image as, and then just save it somewhere. I recommend making a assets folder and then making a new folder named French building, for example. Then in that folder, make another folder, call it textures, and then just save it over there. I like to save my textures as a JPEG with 100% quality, but you might want to prefer PNG. It's up to you. Make sure your naming is right, ground floor underscore albedo. That would make it really easy to import into different programs and in Blender as well. And also make sure that this a bar right here isn't red. If it is red, you have two files with the same name. So please rename them. Just hit save as image. And now we can just render the second pass we need. And that is roughness. So be cautious because we are going to overwrite this image. So we're just going to use the same image node. We're not going to add another image because that would mean that we have to do that to every single material, which is really annoying. So we're just going to overwrite that image here. Just click on roughness and you don't have to do anything. You can just click bake. So this is what I mean. It's now red. So change this name to roughness. And that's why you had to be careful, because we weren't going to change the image node. It's just going to have the same default name. All right, so the roughness is now done. Just change the bake type to normal and bake again. You don't have to do anything here, just bake. If these texture bakes are taking too long, or if your computer can't handle it, you can also just decrease the render resolution, or the image texture resolution, I mean, when we added the image texture. But then you will lose some detail, but it might be helpful, just so you know. So alright, the normal's done. It looks really noisy, that's fine. Just hit image and then save as, and then name this normal. And I'm going to do that for all the other objects right here. Just doing the same thing over and over again, and then I'll get back to you when I'm done with that. Alright, this is the last map I had to bake. So now we can join all of these together again. Let's make sure the UV map is called the UV map. Yep, we only have one. We don't really need these vertex groups anymore, but we can also just keep them. There's no point in removing them. Alright, so yeah, we can add in the textures. What I recommend you do before we add in the textures is just to make these all a fake user, so they don't disappear when we add in our textures. So if something goes wrong, you can always go back to the material and bake it again. So yeah, just click that little shield, and now when we remove this, and there are no more objects with that, with the material, they don't disappear when you close the blend file. So let's add in a new material, call this first floor. Oh, this is very handy for the vertex groups. Just select the ground floor. Select the ground floor. Call this ground floor. And just assign that to the vertices here. And in the principled BCF, we can hit Control, Shift, and T when we have the Node Wrangler add-on enabled. I already showed you where to do that, so Edit, Preferences, Add-ons, and then Node Wrangler. So Control, Shift, and T. Now we can go over to the folder where we saved our images. And now we are going to look for ground floor albedo JPEG, ground floor normal JPEG, and ground floor roughness JPEG. Just select all of these. So they're blue, all of these three, and then principled texture setup. And these will already map them to where they need to be. So as you can see, because we only have one material, this is going to be applied to the entire scene. But since these don't share the same UV map, they will look all weird. But the part where we want them to look normal. So that's nice. We can add in a new material, call this first floor, and do exactly the same thing. Alright, so yeah, that's it. We should probably also just add in a glass texture and assign that to the glass. There's no point in having that be a normal texture. So like that. Yeah. So this is the building. We can now export it. And to do that, we can go to File and then Export, and then click either OBJ, so Wavefront OBJ. This will not include the textures in there. We can hit FBX. This will include the textures if we tell it to. Or we can hit GLTF, and this will include the textures if we tell it to, but much easier than the FBX. Overall, OBJ is like the JPEG of 3D models. It's really lightweight. For now, I'm just going to export GLTF, and I'll export the rest later. So just go over to your folder, Assets, French Building, and I like to make a new folder called that .glb, so I know where the files are. Then in include here, I'm going to include the selected objects. So for the GLB file format, you don't really have to specify that you want textures. You have to specify that you don't want textures. And with Filmbox, it's the other way around. So just call this French building.glb and just save that. And then to prove that that this works, we can go over to New, General, save that of course. And here, just delete the default cube, of course. We don't want that. And a file, import, gltf, glb, whatever. And then import our French building. And here it is. That imported really quickly. Textured mode. Here we have our textures imported. Really nice. So yeah, that's the series, I guess. I'm going to... No, that wasn't the series. I'm going to still make a render with this, of course. But it's almost midnight, so I'm going to stop here. I hope you enjoyed. I hope you learned something. And yeah, I'll see you in the next video where we do a render. Like, subscribe, leave a comment, and I'll see you in the next one. Goodbye.